Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Other Minds and Hands. This is episode 22 as we finish the week of episode 6, the post-episode 6 week, and get ready for the release of episode 7 here this evening. How are you doing this evening, Maggie?
Oh, I think I've recovered. But can we just start with that final shot of episode 6, redeeming like any other issue I ever had with the previous 6 episodes?
Man, the volcano was just visually spectacular. It was really amazing.
And that we all knew where it was going, there's just something about the recognition of like, oh, and it was fun as well as fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good.
The shot of Galadriel, just sort of standing there with that look on her face as the black cloud, goes over her was...
And some interesting conversation on social about that. I don't know if you saw any of the threads of just like, what did you take about that take? Because a lot of people were talking about PTSD and a whole bunch of other things that, somebody was saying she was giving up and was ready to sacrifice herself. And I could see that. I could also see an absolute challenge, like bring it,
Right.
One more thing. Yeah, I got,
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I mean, there was
and the more powerful because it works in several different ways in that way, right? I mean, you could say that is, as you're just suggesting, right? That is Galadriel standing against the darkness. Everybody else is scurrying and running, and like what a wonderful sort of encapsulation, right, of that element of her character. There's Galadriel alone in her armor facing the oncoming darkness, right? And even though she is just being overwhelmed and alone, she has no, hope against it, and yet there she stands, right? So and that's if you think that, you'd be right. Like it absolutely works that way, right? If you see it as, the her despair, right? Like a despair that stems from her PTSD, that stems from her own sort of increasing self-loathing, which has to only have increased after that conversation with Adar, which I think was her absolute lowest point so far in this whole show. I mean, she's been trending downwards, actually. From episode 1 through, she's been trending downwards and like sort of where she is. And if you saw it as like, now after her conversation with Adar and her threatened to murder all of his children and kill him last, and now she's being engulfed by the oncoming darkness. You wouldn't be wrong. Like that's also a fair way to read that. Yeah. If you see it as an almost kind of suicidal impulse, sort of triggered to that, like I'm not gonna resist, as a statement of despair. Yeah, it works that way too. I mean, it works on so many different levels.
Yeah.
And this is why I have a really hard time. Understanding. There are several people who have said like, I don't understand, because I've said many times in Rings and Realms that I think that Galadriel's depiction is really complex. People are like, I don't think Galadriel's complex at all, and I'm like, I can't understand how anybody could possibly say that. Like, there is so much going on.
I'm feeling the same thing.
She's
just an angry teenager. I'm like, oh, there's a lot more, but
there's so much more.
I think that's also kind of revealing, though, if the audience isn't willing to put the work in to look for the nuance or to recognize the nuance, then they're just seen angry.
Yes,
I get that, but I don't see that. Like there's so much going on with her, and I love it when somebody points something out differently from how I saw it, because I saw that as holding my ground. I got a challenge against lava, and somebody else says, "Oh, couldn't that be PTSD?" It's like, holy crap! Yep, that could, because this girl and this woman, and that scene with Adar where we see her. I mean, they're not the same, but all of a sudden you saw a lot more similarities in them than differences.
Man. Yeah.
And
the mirroring in that scene was so strong. Holy cow. Like that. Yeah.
And you understand why he hates her and she hates him. And for the first time, we see Galadriel as something other than a perfect being. We see her as really quite flawed and problematic and perhaps chasing the wrong thing. And
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, as Ariel says in the Twitch chat, she says, as a person who has suffered trauma and has PTSD, I love the way they're portraying Galadriel. They're getting all those nuances so well. It is so complicated. You know, it is so complicated, and again, people who even criticizing Galadriel's actions, right? Like, so to take one example, episode 3, right, when she first went to Numenor, and was like so rude in the, you know, in that first, you know, there were a lot of people who were like, why are they depicting Galadriel like this, right? Well, why are they, like, people were so quick to write that off as just like bad writing. You know, that like, you know, that like, why are they making Galadriel so rude? They shouldn't do that. Look, there's so much going on there, you know, like her own, she's been on edge for the whole time, you know, at the whole show, on the edge of various things, right? We've seen her, she gets triggered and pushed off the edge at various points, and we see her, the way that her pride is involved as well as her, you know, there's like her trauma, there's her pride, there's her hope, there's her despair, all of these things playing in,
and like her people's history, you know, I mean, just like the culture wars against the two as well, like she is embodying that entire culture.
Yes, exactly. And there's, so it's, I mean, that's the other thing that you have to keep in mind. Like, she's not just appearing in some neutral, random royal court here, right? I mean, like, you have to realize this is, to them, you know, to the elves, this is like these are like, these people have betrayed them, you know? Like, and she, you know, clearly sees herself in this sort of ambassadorial position, but not an ambassador, like not like in the position to, like, as an ambassador, suck up to this power, right? You know, she's again, and I'm not saying that it's this, it's like it is not a smart move. She's done a lot of things that aren't smart, right? Because she's in a very complex and chiefly emotionally driven place throughout the show. Anyway, it's as I say, there's so much going on.
I love that we just skip straight to that. Like, okay, let's take a moment. Let's take a moment, everybody.
Take a moment. Yeah, exactly.
Let's take a moment.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, this episode was totally different. We followed one storyline.
Yes.
I wish, like, I guess I don't know if I can say I wish they didn't done that from the beginning, but I wish they'd done that from the beginning. I don't know if I can 100% convince myself of that, because it was so nice to see the snippets of everybody leading up to this. But this was the first episode that I felt like I really got to sit with people and get to know them and feel their emotions.
And I was just very as we requested last week, we got more Arondir and Bronwyn, and I feel so much better about that storyline. I mean, not that I felt bad about it, but I did feel disconnected from it. It was the one that I got, everyone's different there. There'll always be people who are like, I love them most from the beginning, and that's cool. But anyway, we were talking about our own experiences with that last week, and I definitely, watching Bronwyn about bleed out, I became invested. So that was good.
And their relationship too. Like, I know we talked about that last week, but like, you know, and the relationship too. I just didn't care or believe it, or I had no connection to it. And then the moment that they do share was just really natural, and it just fit them. And I love how it was shot, with us being kind of farther away in this like little idyllic situation. And all of a sudden I was like, okay, I'm on board.
Yep.
I see it.
So I thought that was really cool. I thought that was a really good effect. I mean, I don't think at the end of the day, like, I did really love the focus on that whole through line. And I know, you know, we've saying it's one storyline, technically two, because, you know, the other one got integrated with it halfway through the episode. But still, at the same time, though, I was like, I'm still feeling Harfoot withdrawal. You know, so like
I'm feeling Durin withdrawal. I know.
Yeah, exactly. So
if I could have a whole episode of Durin and Elrond, I'm in.
The previews have promised both Durin and Elrond and Harfoots in this coming episode. So in the end, I don't think that I can say that I wish every episode had been as focused as it would have been. Really, I mean, then we would be leaving like, you know, the Harfoots behind for 5 weeks, and it would. I mean, there's a whole bunch of plot lines they have to move along, so I sort of get that, but yeah.
But it was nice to have a change of pace. Yeah.
Yep. Yes. Yeah. Varking is commiserating with you on the Durin withdrawal. You know, that's
Varking. I mean, I know we all kind of like high five and laugh, like, "Oh, Varking is dwarves," and like he was onto something. That Varking.
Exactly. From the beginning, long before the show was launched, Varking has been saying like it's all about the dwarves, and now we're all like, he was so wise from the beginning. Yeah, absolutely.
I love it.
Yeah. Tyler, that's a really interesting observation that it was the best episode of the season and yet somehow didn't have the best storyline of the season, which is, he says, Elrond and Durin. That is interesting. Yeah.
I find it difficult to even say things like best episode. It was, I don't know. I don't know if it was the best episode, but
yeah.
I liked it more than 5 for sure. But I also still am thinking more and more that this is a bigger arc. You know, I read an article, I think it was actually Kat Sass, wasn't it? Where she was talking about this was the first episode that made it feel like a strong television episode. Right. Because they tend to forget that this is episodic. Right. And I kind of agree. And I want to go back and watch the whole of the first season in one 8-hour go, because I think that's going to make a whole lot more sense. It's not filmed episodically, and that therefore it's made it harder to kind of stick with.
Right. Exactly. There are a lot of challenges to this. I mean, it's one of the things, whenever I, you know, am thinking along these lines, like, oh, you know, maybe it would be cool if they had done this differently, right? Well, then I try to imagine, like, what would be the implications of that? Like, it would be cool to do more sustained stories, but at the cost of, you know, going 4 episodes with no dwarves and 4 episodes with no, you know, Harfoots, and I don't think in the end it would be worth the cost there. Anyway, and I end up thinking that on a lot of levels. You know, there's so many things where, you know, it's like, well, you know, if there's so much they're trying to do. Like, there's so much that they need to capture. Season 1, I think, in particular, is really challenging. I mean, we always knew that this was going to be challenging because it's the sort of setup and establishment of the whole thing. My biggest hope, like my biggest piece of optimism for season 2, is that having established the characters, having established the plot lines, season 2 can really just focus on, you know, people have talked about like, oh, you know, I hear people complaining about not enough happening. It's hard. You know, I have no sympathy with people who consider this show boring. I'm like, there's so much happening, I can barely even track with. I have to watch it 3 times to try to keep up with things. But I do think more sort of less establishment, more action is likely what we're going to be able to get in season 2. Yeah. And I think it really should be a quite different kind of process in season 2 than we're getting in season 1.
I think it's going to be really interesting. I mean, like, I hope, you know, as we meander this evening, we talk a little bit about what we're thinking the end of this season and the start of next season, because I think the continuity is going to be a real challenge. And like you said, they really had to set up a load. Like, they made such a big deal when we were in London and New York to say they had 118 speaking characters. Like, they know what they're juggling and like how much they have to juggle. What we've just learned is that it's going to be about 2 years until season 2 comes out. Yeah. That's a really big ask of your audience to have that big of a gap, isn't it? But that also means we have a lot of time to deep dive into season 1 potentially, and I sure hope there's a lot of content between season 1 and season 2 for discussion and analysis and behind the scenes and all this other stuff to kind of keep us engaged. Yeah. And then when we get into the start of season 2, we're ready, you know, like pumped and primed. We know who these people are. We know what's at stake. Yeah. It's going to be a different way to view something.
Yeah. There is a lot to talk about, but we sure need to we sure need that to happen in order to, and we don't know. I mean, they haven't set a release date. You know, there was that, you know, a bunch of people talking about that Hollywood Reporter article, which suggested that there might be a time. We know they're filming right now. Like we don't even, we're not sure who or if we're going to be able to get a member of the cast for our Twitter show tomorrow, because
it's all happening.
It's all happening. They're like, you know, the message we just got was, we have to wait to see what the shooting schedule is tomorrow in order to see who might be available.
We need to hear from production, and then we'll see who's available to basically dive into a tent and jump on Twitter with us.
Right, exactly. So I mean, it's happening right now. Again, you know, what the timing will be, no idea. But anyway. Maggie, did you see Meow Indeed's question for you about the plot structure of episode 6?
Is that the one? Yeah.
The roller coaster one.
Roller coaster. First the tower kills all the orcs. Yay. Then they survive and invade. Sad. And then yay. And then sad. Exhausted watching it. I mean, I think that's the point, to be honest. It was such a barrage on that village over and over and over again. You keep thinking you get a minute to catch your breath, and it's the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. So they do give us those like soft little moments to just go in order to up the ante. So I think that's very purposeful. I mean, that is just rising action to a climax. And I don't think we're at the climax yet. I think this is all still rising action, and it's building us up to the last 2 episodes. And I don't know if you guys have seen all of the promotion and marketing that has come out today.
I have not.
I'm not going to watch the trailers, but it is all over my Instagram feed and things of like, the last 2 episodes are being billed together as the finale, pretty much. Like, are you pumped for the last 2 episodes? The finale of Rings and Realms. So they're Rings and Realms, Rings of Power.
I keep doing that too.
all the time. So they keep building it up as like, this is the finale, these 2 episodes. So I think this is all rising action. I don't know if it was perfectly handled. There was a lot of jumping around. I think I even mentioned it in Rings and Realms, the first analysis that I did of that fight scene. There was just a lot of back and forth. I think it worked in that scene. The pacing of that was really strong, to like cut to the villagers being scared, cut to the fight being terrifying, back and forth. But there was a lot in this episode that was nice. But when we got the low moment, I could have used just a little bit more. Not low, I could have used a little bit more depth potentially, you know, like thinking about the low moments of that episode, or the quieter moments. There were maybe 4. You know, like keen are the eyes of the elves, the buddies post fight right before they interview Adar, Galadriel and Halbrand in the woods, and look, you have a new king. Maybe there were 1 or 2 and Arondir and Bronwyn. 5. We have 5 soft moments in that episode. And that makes for a rough go of it, and you probably needed a nap after that episode. So
it was certainly intense. I mean, my experience after watching it the first time was very much like that, kind of like out of breath feeling. It was a lot.
And that we end with friggin' Mountain Doom. Like, there's no chance for relaxation. It's just straight into kaboom.
And then lava starts falling on them. So
and potentially everybody's dead that we just saw fight for their lives. Like, we don't actually know yet until the start of the next episode.
So let's talk about Halbrand briefly.
You have to talk about Halbrand. 99 people are waiting for it.
It was my number one thing I didn't get to in Rings and Realms. So I have changed my mind about Halbrand. I have not changed my mind that I don't think he's Sauron. I still find those arguments very, very weak, and I still find those arguments and I still say all the same things that I said about that. That I'm going to need a lot of, like, they're going to have to do 20 minutes of exposition to convince me that it was a good plan for Sauron to be doing this. The one possibility, right? The one way in which Halbrand being Sauron ever made sense is the idea that he is repentant in some way. The idea of the repentant Sauron is there in the text at the very, very beginning of the Second Age, but of course everything is being pushed to the end, so in theory that could happen. I never believed that, though, because Sauron clearly has plans in motion, and so like that he's still repenting at this time of day seems almost impossible to believe. And that, I think, was plainly contradicted by Adar's story, right? I still don't believe a lot of what Adar says. I think that Adar is not seeing the same world that we're all seeing at all. I mean, I think that Adar is quite plainly delusional about many things. He's extremely convincing, but I don't believe him nevertheless. However, I do believe him about Sauron's research experiments on orcs, right? We saw the physical evidence of that, which Galadriel had the same assessment, back in episode 1. And so therefore Sauron, I mean, unless he repented after that, which is really hard to believe that he would be doing that. Anyway, so no, I don't believe that Sauron is still at this time in the plot repentant, or whenever Halbrand got on his raft. It would work if not for the fact that it really can't be happening at this point. I still absolutely disbelieve. So there are two factors that still absolutely, I do not think that Halbrand being Sauron fits. That's one, it makes no sense of the Sauron plot at all. Why would Sauron be doing any of that? Especially within the scope of his knowledge. Like within the scope of his knowledge, he would have no possible way of knowing. He was going to randomly have a chance encounter with Galadriel at sea after a shipwreck, nor that they would then be found and taken to Numenor. Like, none of those things make sense, actually. So I disbelieve in that plot line entirely. But the second reason why I don't continue to not think that Halbrand is Sauron is that Halbrand's own story is, in my opinion, too compelling for that. I love Halbrand's story. And if it all turns out just to be a crock, then I will strongly dislike that.
I can't see it being a crock, but I'm struggling with what else it could be. I mean, I don't think he's Sauron either. So it's not like, oh, what else could he be? It's like, no, right. Tell me what the other options are, because I think that's the part that I'm missing, because he clearly has a real depth of history there and has walked away from something. And if that is completely fictional and they've just made up this deep storyline, I'm going to struggle with it. I assume you think it's going to be set in lore somehow. And I also think he becomes the king of the dead, or I hope he becomes the king of the dead.
That's still my favorite. That's my favorite reading,
I love
absolutely.
That idea.
Yeah, I love that too. Yeah. If I had it to choose, that's absolutely the direction I would take it. But okay, so here's the major things that I feel like, again, just considering Halbrand's, but ignoring the Sauron stuff for a minute, because I still don't think it makes a lick of sense. And just looking at Halbrand's plot and how it fits with what we've seen, right? He's running away, right? He's been running away. You're asking me to go back to the one place I said I would never go back to. He is talking about what he's done. He spoke first in episode 3 about the blood oath of his ancestors, right? And he was at first seeming to imply that, like, oh, he's worried that the blood oath of his ancestors will still, weigh on him, right? And he won't be free of it. But then, of course, in episode 5, in the mutual confession scene with Galadriel, he came around to admitting that it wasn't just about his ancestral blood oath, that he himself has done things, right? And I believe that he himself. So, and my suspicion, based on what we saw in episode 5 with Waldreg, the only blood can bind scene, when Adar forced Waldreg to murder Rowan, which happened off screen. We don't know that it happened for sure. I mean, I've not seen a body from Rowan, right? But I'm assuming that that's what I felt like I was being invited to conclude, that Waldreg had to, kill Rowan, and through killing Rowan, solidify his oath, right, to Adar's service. So when Halbrand finds Adar, right, and we see how upset he is about Adar and how much he wants to kill Adar, going back to what Halbrand said about blood oaths, historical, and about you don't know what I've done. If you did, you would despise me, and everyone here would despise me. It seems to me that what happened is that Adar forced him to kill somebody, that he swore to Adar in order to save his own life, and that he was forced to kill somebody in order to do that, like Waldrig was as well. And who knows? I don't know who it was, right? Adar gave us a little hint, right, in saying, like, did I kill someone that you loved or whatever?
Right.
And I think the answer is like, no, it's actually worse than that. You made me kill somebody I loved.
You made me kill somebody that I love.
Exactly. Exactly, Chris. I couldn't help but think of that too. If I remember Halbrand's comment about having taken the sigil off a dead man, right?
Yeah.
Did he take it off the man he killed? Which could be a couple things, right? It could be his own father, right? Whom he was forced to kill, and whose sigil he took, which would weigh him, which would be both like, I need to fulfill this legacy from my father, which again, given all the legacies from fathers we've seen in season 1, that seems to me like that could potentially work for sure, and would certainly mean that his relationship with that sigil would be extremely fraught, right? Not only with the desire to make it right, and accomplish what his father never accomplished, but also massively burdened with guilt if in fact he had to kill his own father in order to to swear to Adar. I mean, I don't know. I think
Darren's comment here, that feels good. He could have killed his brother. The brother thing with Galadriel seemed to get to him. I hadn't really thought about that.
Yeah, the brother thing. Sure, yeah, that's possible. It's also possible that he's not the king at all. Right?
Yeah.
From when we first met him in episode 2, you'll remember I was theorizing that he was the long-lost king of the Southlands. That, of course, turned out to be his plot arc, at least to this point. I believed it until he said yes.
Yeah.
Right? As soon as...
We said the same thing. As soon as he took up that helm, we were like, no.
Yeah. When he says, when Bronwyn is like, "Are you the king we've always been, we've been waiting for?" and he's like, Yes, I am. I was like, no, he isn't.
I believed you until that moment. You smug little faker,
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, and in his defense, like he kept saying like, no, it's not me. This is, you're forcing me into this. He's been voluntold into this role from the beginning, right, by Galadriel. Now he's not been forthcoming, right, about the real story and everything, so like that's nobody's fault but his own, but still, like when he stepped up and said that he that he was the real king, I at that point, in that moment, I doubted it. So anyway, So Tyler Klotz says, what if he killed his father not because Adar forced him, but because they were going to side with Adar and he stopped them? I know, because remember when he was like, while he was uttering to Galadriel the words, "You don't know what I've done," right? "If you knew what I had done, then you would despise me," and everything. While those words were being spoken, they were being overlaid on the video, on the the image of Waldrig leading that half of the refugees to Adar and kneeling down before Adar, right? So there was like more than an implication, and when you combine that with his mention of the blood oath back in episode 3, I cannot imagine that he's actually innocent. Like that's like the one scenario I have a really hard to, as far as like his character, it's one of the hardest things that I have to, because he wouldn't be, I mean, yes, he could still feel really guilty. He could still say something like the "you would despise me" line if he were guilty of parricide, right? Even parricide in a good cause, right? Like he would still be guilty about that. But I if that were true, then the kind of misdirection that the show was doing in that moment would have been, what you and I, Maggie, were talking about is like the bad kind of misdirection, where they're just like misleading us for the sake of misleading us, right? So I mean, it's possible. I mean, I can't rule it out.
But it's hugely risky. It's kind of irresponsible. Like,
yes.
I don't know. It's not a smart choice because you're assuming that your audience is going to be able to keep up, and I don't know. I want to give a lot of credit to the audience, but I'm also like, we're also in an age where everybody has their phone in their hands for the entirety of whatever episode. So like, you can't put that many minute, tiny details in an episode. And
yeah. I mean, it's definitely going to be, So, Adar's "Who are you?" line.
Who are you?
Okay. So first of all, the fact that Adar didn't recognize him, I actually kind of loved. And again, I'm speaking here within, like, unless I'm explicitly debunking the Halbrand equals Sauron idea, just know that I am talking about the plot arc we are being given for Halbrand, right? I'm accepting that, okay? At least for now, because that's what we've been given, and it is so much more coherent. It's so much more compelling a story. I will, if Halbrand turn out to be Sauron, I would mourn the loss of the plot line of Halbrand's plot line as much as I would lament the unreason of that Sauron plot line. They're like both negative and positive reasons why I am very much hoping that he's not Sauron, because I like his character. I like his arc. I'm really interested. The way that it maps back to, calls back to Aragorn, and exactly. Yeah, it does seem like a cop out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does seem like
there's so many other things that character can do, and everybody thinks, oh, it's so easy, he's Halbrand, it has to be Sauron, it has to be. Well, if they go with that, I'll be like, well, dang, there's so many other cool things that can happen with that.
Severely disappointing. But anyway, so, but back to Halbrand's actual storyline, right? When Adar says that he doesn't recognize him, right? I kind of liked that, actually.
I did too.
Right? One of the things that we see, and people were saying like, oh, that must be really, really significant. It must prove that Halbrand is just a disguise, right? Because Adar has never seen him before. No, it means that Adar doesn't give a crap about the humans who swear fealty to him. He cares only about the orcs. Is he going to recognize Waldreg 2 weeks from now? No, he's not going to recognize. Does he care anything about Waldreg? No.
And it also gives you like the depth of how many people he's probably done this to. Because I don't remember you. This is not a new occurrence.
I force people to kill their relatives all the time. And I don't care about any of them, and I'm not it's like, don't think you're special, right? I don't remember you. You don't matter. And what is like this huge life-changing event to you is utterly inconsequential to me. Like, to me, that was just like, yet again, Adar being amazingly creepy villain, right?
When you pointed out it was like Drax from Guardians, I was like, yes, exactly. Just have no concept of any effect that he could have on someone's life because it's just an ant under his boot.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And for Adar in particular, it really demonstrates how much he is focused on his children, right? On the orcs. Like he doesn't he's willing to take the service of the humans, right? When they come to him. He's willing to use Waldreg, for instance. But he doesn't care. That's why he has them kill each other. That's why he sends them out in order to die in the village, right? Because he doesn't value them at all or care even a little bit, right? So yes, his non-recognition of Halbrand felt to me perfectly sensible in that way, and really interesting. So then the question is, why does he ask who he is later on? Because it seemed like
something, right?
Something.
So like there's something.
Yeah, like first of all, remember Halbrand. When the first time when he doesn't recognize him, he's just like the warrior who's holding a spear at his throat, right?
Yeah.
Later on, when Adar asks that question, Halbrand is clearly like, it's clear that he has some kind of position. It's clear that there's some sort of significance to him, right?
Well, and that he stopped Galadriel from slitting his throat. I mean,
Yes,
if a man is able to stop an elf from
exactly.
doing that, he's got something.
I
Yeah,
think
so
he's
he
now
at
paying
least
attention to
clocked that.
Halbrand for the first time, right?
Yeah.
And also, like, and does this mean that and does he think that he can use him like he's using Waldreg? I think that that's very possible, right? And not to mention the fact that there's even apart. So there's two ways that I look at it. First is from Adar's point of view, right? And it makes all kinds of sense to me that in that moment when Halbrand stops Galadriel slitting his throat is going to be the moment when Adar's like, maybe I should actually pay attention to who that idiot with the spear was, who apparently I did something to, but I don't care, right? Now Halbrand is a person of interest to him. But of course, more importantly, somebody had to ask him that, right? I think it's really important for Halbrand to have been asked the question, who are you? Right before because it's right before the kingship scene, right? That is right before he's announced as king of the Southlands.
He's setting everyone up to question it.
Exactly.
That is laid there for you to go, I don't know.
And so for Adar to be asking that question, we're supposed to be asking, like it's prepping us for that question. And it's one of the reasons, again, why having been prompted with that, like, okay, who are you actually, Halbrand? There's so many ways in which that question can land, right?
And it completely sets you up to not trust. I mean, like we said, I could have believed that he was the king of the Southlands until that moment. But having that question set up immediately after he takes the helm, you go, no, who are you? You haven't answered that yet. So therefore, I don't believe this answer.
Right, exactly. His walking out without answering that question, again, can be read as so many things in this show can be read in multiple ways, right? There's the one like his, as you say, his failure to answer that question, or his refusal to answer that question, for me as a viewer, fuels my own uncertainty just in time for him to be announced king and me to be uncomfortable with it, right? But it's also kind of a strong thing. Like, he doesn't have to tell Adar, right? The very fact that his response to Adar was not to engage with him and to mirror him like Galadriel did, but instead just turn around and walk away. Yeah. That was good. Like, that was a good move. Like, I like, that was Halbrand being strong. So it lands that way too. Like, it sort of, it shows, I'm not saying it's like just a bad thing, right? That he,
no, it shows position. It shows confidence. I mean, it definitely shows some sort of powerful position that you couldn't just have if you were just a layperson in that situation.
Yeah, exactly.
And Meow Indeed agreed. We want Joseph Male as well, and we have requested, but I wouldn't hold your breath because
they got back to me and said that it's likely that would not happen because they said they'll ask, but he's not really doing many interviews right now, so it probably won't happen, sadly. We'll.
Corey was very passionate in his ask, so
I was. Please, pretty please.
I really want to talk to this guy.
Really, I don't think there has been a finer performance in season 1 than Joseph
how
Miller.
Quickly that character got us.
Yes.
Like, he didn't need the 4 episodes of foundation laying and setup. That character was strong and menacing and thoughtful all at the same time within seconds of screen time. And the way he played it was just so subtle and beautiful and disturbing. I thought it was brilliant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So anyway, we'll see about Halbrand. Probably not. I mean, do you think we'll get anything more of that plot line in this episode? Do you think they'll just leave us hanging until episode 8? Until will Galadriel stand up covered in ash in episode 8 or episode 7? Do you think?
Oh yeah, I feel like we should do this. Let's go through what do we think is going to happen with Halbrand. I feel like he's going to hold on to this role at least through the start of season 2, but we as an audience are going to have a reason to doubt him. Like, we kind of already do, but I feel like we're going to see something to kind of shift the belief of, like, it's clear we have to be suspicious. Right now, I think we are suspicious, but it should be clear that we should be suspicious. So, yeah. Galadriel in the ash, I sure hope it's in 7, because we certainly left her hanging.
Yes, all of them. I mean, the question of who's alive and who's dead.
Yeah, I mean, are any of them going to survive that? I don't know. Yeah. If not, then we've just lost a whole lot of the cast.
Yeah. Well, exactly. No, I can't imagine. There's obviously not all dead. I mean, we know Isildur and Elendil are going to survive. Quite confident in that. Great. I'm quite confident Muriel's going to survive too, because her eventual death at what I project to be the end of season 4 is too good not to do. So yes, for sure. Bronwyn, Theo, Arondir, I don't fear for any of them yet either. They're still way too early in their plots.
I do think we're going to lose somebody, if not a few somebodies, before the end of the season.
Right. So that was Darren's question. Who's going to be the first named character to die?
Oh.
Do you think? And will it happen in season 1? So let's see. Who will be the first one to die?
Bronwyn, Arondir are on my list. Theo, not yet. I think he's got a ways to arc.
Yeah, I think Bronwyn could die.
Yeah.
Could be Bronwyn.
I think Bronwyn and Arondir are the top chopping block because we don't know their continued trajectory, and we have a romance there, so it's going to be extra tragic if one of them dies.
Yeah,
Yeah, Isildur's friends probably.
Isildur's friends, but I'm not even counting them.
Yeah, we only learned their names last week because we read the subtitles so many times.
Right, exactly. So Valandil's clearly going to die. I doubt he'll die just in the explosion of Mount Doom. Like that's. I actually don't think there are going to be any named characters killed by the volcano. I think it's too. There needs to be more focus on that. Untamo and Valandil, sure. I think we'll lose them both eventually, but we'll lose almost everybody eventually. But brace yourself.
Spoilers.
Everybody's gonna die. Just about.
The second age is rough.
It is really rough. Bronwyn. Here's why I think Bronwyn is much more likely than Arondir, because again, dealing with tragedy, right? Arondir left. So if one of the two of them dies and the other is left behind, Arondir being left behind and kind of taking on himself a sort of, step parental relationship with Theo is, I think, a much more interesting and rich kind of dynamic than just Arondir dying and Theo being like, oh, well, and, Bronwyn being sad, but moving on in her, mother-son relationship.
It's a little cliche and to be expected, but I feel like Bronwyn has kind of done I'm stepping into the powerful role. I am leading my people. I am sacrificing on behalf. So it's like somebody just pointed out, Southland's story is over. Bronwyn's story is over. I don't know if her story's over, but like we did just kind of lose that ground of the village. So
the defense of the Southlands is done now.
I don't want to lose one of our female characters, but I don't think she was ever one of the best ones either. So it wouldn't surprise me if it was Bronwyn.
Yeah, she's a good option. Who else? Numenorians? No, I mean Eärien, but she's not done anything yet, so definitely not Eärien. No, I'm just thinking of because the problem with the Numenorians is very few of them are expendable, right? I mean, we're not losing Isildur, we're not losing Elendil, we're not losing Muriel, so that leaves us with relatively, again, yes, and Isildur's friends, but I don't count them.
Harfoots, absolutely, we could lose any of them because they're not necessarily carried forward, but none of them seem vital enough or tragic enough to immediately lose, and I think they're going to be our through line to carry into the next part of the story. I don't know how yet, but
we absolutely could lose like Largo or Marigold, but that wouldn't really be that impactful at this point.
We wouldn't exactly. We wouldn't gain anything by losing them. Which I realize sounds cliche, but that's why.
No, that's exactly. I mean, it's
you gain a lot of story
if you're making that choice.
Dying.
I mean, there's it has to accomplish something for the narrative, right? You don't just kill people off for fun, right?
And I agree, Poppy is set up to be a potential powerful loss, but not yet.
Not yet. It's not powerful enough yet.
Poppy's going to carry us like Frodo carried us. If we're going to lose her, it's going to be longer. Yep.
Agreed. But I would think Theo could be, but not, again, his arc has too much to go.
Not yet. Yeah. I think it's just going to be Bronwyn. I'm going to stick to that.
It is likelier.
Thinking through the rest of them, we haven't spent enough time with any of them for it to be impactful. and we haven't spent enough time for any of them to lose them yet. I mean, it wouldn't
I have
do
a
anything.
horrible suggestion.
Oh no.
Disa.
I knew you were going to say that. Nope. No.
I hope Varking's not still listening. But I mean, like, I'm not advocating for it. Not advocating for it.
I will say I can see that in terms of how much we love them. It would be tragic to lose her, but we're not going to lose her yet. If we're going to lose her, it's going to be well into their life.
No, I don't predict it.
Really in love with her before they kill her.
I mean, I'm just thinking, like, who are candidates, right?
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, I mean, again, that other plot, like Gil-galad, Celebrimbor, Elrond, Durin, we still need them all for like they still have explicit roles.
Yeah, I mean, like the top tier names we know from Laura Carey on. So, like, I'm sorry, they're not on the list. The second tier names, there's just so few that we've spent enough time with for it to be any kind of issue.
For it to count.
Yeah.
In this,
so, like,
in
it
this
could be
way.
Halbrand. It could be.
I mean, basically,
Bronwyn.
When I'm answering this question, I am considering, like, people on the cast list, like people who are there, like that we got to meet in San Diego, basically, like the people who are like listed as like the primary cast of season 1.
Could be talent on a show. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like that. Those are the people that. So anybody. So like Durin the Third doesn't count. Like, I mean, yeah, he might die, but I'm not counting him.
Tar Palantir probably gonna kick it.
Yeah, Tar Palantir. Yeah, exactly. I thought he was dead in episode 4, but then he got better. Yeah. So no. Those are possible, but again, they don't count. I'm talking about main character people.
Yeah.
No, not Halbrand. Again, he has too far to go. His plot arc is way too unresolved for that.
I don't know. I could see them doing something with that. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
If they set it up well enough that we're doubting Halbrand, but he's owning the title of King of the Southlands, and then he dies, and we're left, and so are all the people of the Southlands.
Right.
That could be.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's. Trish, I agree. I'm not convinced any of those major characters are going to die in this season. Yeah. I think if I were placing a bet, my bet would be on all of them surviving this season, especially since there's a lot of them are going to die eventually. So why start it right now? You know. So I think the smartest money is on none of them die. Again, those, like, what is it, 23 main characters? That I forget the exact number, but yeah. So again, the Elder King Durin, not on the list. Tar Palantir, not on the list. I'm not saying we don't see any mortality at all. Right. I'm just saying of the major characters, I don't think so. So yeah. But I think I agree at the end of the day, if any of them, I think Bronwyn is likeliest. For sure. Yeah. Anyway, okay.
I'm looking at your list. What are the other things we needed to...
Things we needed to talk about. Let's think about the trajectory of, like, where are we headed this season? I mean, we're talking about people dying or not, right? But where are we headed in this season?
Where are we headed?
Yeah, like, so what's... Yeah.
We have a bad. We have an Adar.
Yep.
We have the threat of a big bad, but we don't have a big bad yet.
Right.
So we know we have to head that direction.
Yeah.
We literally just saw Mount Doom show up, so...
That's a clear and important turning point. Obviously, the reveal of Sauron, I think it's very clear. We're going to find out, by the end of season 1, we're going to know what Sauron is and what he's been doing.
He's been all over the posters.
Exactly. So yes, still expecting my, let me introduce you to my friend Adar, or sorry, to my friend Anatar from Celebrimbor, right. Whether they use the name Anatar or not.
My project manager. I love that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Right. Yes, excellent. The furnaces are done. Well, now it's time for me to introduce you to the one who's made all this possible. Right. Still expecting that. What else needs to be accomplished? What else? All right, okay, let me approach this question from another way. Of the things that we don't know, how many of the... So who is Sauron and where, I think, is one question that is definitely going to be resolved. Who is the stranger? Do we think that's going to be resolved? I'm thinking yes with an asterisk. I think it's resolved, but I don't necessarily think that he... Not everything might be explained, if you see what I mean, right? There might still be some like uncertainties about what exactly is going on there or what is going to happen. But
I think we can safely blanket say all of our questions will not be answered because they have spent this entire season setting up a lot of questions and a lot of uncertainty and a lot of misdirection. So I don't think most of that is going to be clarified. But I do think we'll know at least that like Blue Wizard or Gandalf or Independent, we might know that side of
Wizard versus something else at the very least. Like,
and I think he'll know who he is. I feel like that's the angle I would take. Like he's going to step into the role of who he is.
Right.
Because he doesn't quite know what his role is except to follow stars. And that leads into the cultists, which everybody's talking about. Like, who the heck are they and what's their deal? And so they're clearly setting that up to be
Did I explain my cultist theory last week?
I don't remember. Sorry.
That's okay. So here's my cultist theory. Now, keep in mind, this is based only on the footage we got of the cultists in episode 5, right? Like that one shot of the cultists. Based on that one shot of the cultist, here is my quick cultist theory. Blue wizards, right? Famously, Tolkien says when he invents the blue wizards in the essay on the Astari, he says they went bad. And how they went bad was in starting magic cults out in the East. Right? They were the leaders of mystical cults out in the East, trying to build their own power. So they went like the kind of Saruman light route, basically. They were like
Saruman light.
They were like minor league Sarumans out in the East, right? Okay, so, but of course, then later on in his life, Tolkien kind of took it back and was clearly theorizing that maybe the Blue Wizards didn't fail and they accomplished a bunch of stuff out in the East. And if it had not been for their efforts, then Sauron's armies would have been even bigger. Blah blah blah, right? So you're JD and Patrick, and you want to include the two Blue Wizards into your Second Age story, especially since Tolkien says the two Blue Wizards might have arrived during the Second Age. So you want to involve the two Blue Wizards. What do you do? Which story do you take? Well, there are two of them, right? So you could have one of them stay faithful and accomplish some cool things, and you could have the other one go off to become the leader of magic cults.
Look at you.
So,
it's like you know this stuff, Corey.
So what do we get in episode 5? Creepy cultists, right?
Creepy cultists.
So I'm thinking, and of course we saw what's more an explicit connection with that constellation symbol on the inside of the shield, right?
Yeah.
So the theory then would be the reason he was drawing that constellation sign is that sign is somehow connected to his fellow Blue Wizard compatriot, right? That he would be the second of the two Blue Wizards. The stranger would be the second of the two Blue Wizards to arrive. The first one arrived earlier on. We don't know exactly how much earlier or exactly how or when, right? But he's arrived already. And so when he awakes, right, in his confused, newly incarnated state, the one idea that he's like has and is holding on to in his head is I need to find my colleague, right? I need to find the other dude. And so he's drawn the constellation, right? Which constellation has now been made part of this mystic symbol of the creepy cultists, right? And they are finding him, right? They were sent out searching for him. So again, the theory would be that his colleague, the other Blue Wizard, has already arrived and has already become a creepy cult leader, leading creepy cult people whom he has sent out to hunt for his colleague whom he knows has arrived. And there's going to be surprise and chagrin when
I feel like that's
happens.
not even a theory anymore. That feels so clearly explained because we know they're connected. They showed up at the crash site. They had the star on the inside of the shield. Like, they are clearly connected. Now
exactly.
We know how.
They're clearly connected. So this would work. Like, this would work really well. But But I don't know. I mean, it necessitates the other one having arrived a lot earlier, and we don't know what he's up to. But we still have lots of time to learn about that, right? So, so why did the stranger get placed in the Harfoot storyline? Oh, well, that's easy, because he's in the Harfoot storyline because he's going to be the one who's going to do good, right? And so the Harfoots and he are going to be involved in this like small hands that move the wheels of the world thing. I still have no idea where they're headed, like the Harfoots, that is. What exactly is... Nori has this sense of calling, right? Like Bilbo and Frodo did, according to Tolkien, right? There's something that she's supposed to do. She doesn't know what it is yet.
And the
right?
friendship theme. I mean, it's just so beautifully simple there that she feels the need to look after him and then he feels the need to help her. Like, it's just so pure that
Yes.
I think you need something as pure as the Harfoots and as pure as an amnesia-filled wizard to kind of have that connection.
And what's he going to do? It's also interesting. Remember, there were a lot of people who were really concerned, like, the Harfoots are supposed to be not remembered, right, by the general public, right? So if they do something big to thwart Sauron, everyone's going to know about it, and that would seem to break lore, right? Which I hate that phrase, by the way. Like, lore doesn't get broken. Yes. It's not, it's like, it's a phrase is wrong in every way. Like first of all, the lore isn't like that. It's not this unified canon that people want to make it to be. And secondly, nothing gets broken when you make a change. Like I mean, goodness, there's a whole bunch of things that Tolkien wrote that I think break the lore. I was just complaining about this on Twitter. I was getting triggered by people on Twitter asking me about the choice of the half-elven and Arwen's brothers, but I'm not going there right now. The point is that, nevertheless, this idea. So, like, what if the whole Harfoot's plotline is going to be focused to the east instead of to the west? Right? What if they actually never interact with Sauron or Galadriel or the other plot lines at all? What if what they're doing is working to thwart the magic cults somehow, of the rogue blue wizard? Like, their whole story is oriented towards this other threat, right? Which certainly has some connection with Sauron, right? Just like Saruman, had a connection with Sauron, right? So this, the rogue blue wizard, let's call him Alatar. Alatar and Palondo were the two names he gave to the blue wizards. And he lists them in that order always. So I'm guessing that the stranger is Palondo, number 2 in the list, right? As the second one to arrive. And yeah, absolutely. The Entwives and Ents get involved. Possibly.
Well, we saw them in a trailer and we've yet to really see them. So
I know the Entwives are going to be involved. The reason I'm hesitating about whether they're involved in the Harfoot's plotline is that if the Harfoots head east, then they're heading out of... we know where the Brownlands are, right? We know where the Gardens of the Entwives are supposed to be, and I don't see any reason to think they're necessarily going to change that. So until we see otherwise, I'm assuming the Entwives are living in the place where we were told they were living in the text, which is up next to the Anduin, upriver from Rauros. And in other words, in the map, we saw the migration map. We saw them going south well past that and then turning and heading off towards the east. And that's the last that we saw them. So where we last saw the Harfoots on the map of Middle-earth is like the upper right-hand corner of Mordor, north of the upper right-hand corner of Mordor, outside the mountains. Anyway, so like they're pointed east, like they're headed in that direction. So if they're out there doing something, so we're getting like the Harfoot's plotline becomes this whole like internal Blue Wizards plotline, right? That would work really well, and it would mean they would still be impacting the other trajectory, but they wouldn't be involved. So, Chris, are the Entwives fan servicey? Well, yeah, it's fan service, but it's also the story. Like Tolkien said, it was in the war with Sauron in the Second Age that the Entwives' gardens are destroyed and the Entwives are killed or driven away. So, like, they need a reason to not do that. It's just exactly what it's not. It's actually even easier. I remember I get so annoyed. I gave so many interviews talking about this 10 years ago, about the inclusion of Legolas in the Hobbit films, right? Everyone's like, oh, that's just fan service. No, it's logic. Like, it's the Elven King, his father's hall. Like, he was not in the Hobbit book because his character hadn't been invented yet, right? But if you're going to go back and make it consistent, like, you have to have a reason to have Legolas not there when his father's kingdom is at war. Like, of course he's going to be there. So, like, is it fan service? Yes. But does it make sense? It absolutely makes compelling sense that Legolas would be involved in that.
And fan service just means including something that makes fans smile or recognize. Right. That should be technically all of Tolkien's work. So if we're putting that in there, you know, Easter eggs are something different. That's hidden. That's a little clue. That's a little like, I know you're a big fan. But fan service, it's just like, yep, there's a character that you know. Ta-da.
Right, exactly. Like a little random Tom Bombadil cameo would be just fan service. That would be just fan service. I'm not saying I'm not hoping for that, but yeah.
Yeah, especially if they didn't point him out, but we all knew because they planted something that's only Tom Bombadil. Right. It's like,
exactly. Right, yeah, I don't know. Scene where like random guy in blue jacket goes, you know, skipping and hopping across the background. Like, yeah,
exactly.
Sure. Exactly. That's exactly what Madagot was just asking for. See, yeah, I'm cool with that. Actually, Madagot even better. See a guy with yellow boots and blue jacket get pulled into the river. That's what I want to see. That's how he met his wife. So that would be exciting. Anyway, okay.
Past him.
Yeah. So that would be even better. I'd be like, where did that guy go? Yeah, no idea. Yeah. Anyway, whatever. It's probably not important. So anyhow, so that's my, based on, you know, like 30 seconds of footage, that's my creepy cultist theory. So we'll see. And as always, this is like a hypothesis based on very limited data. I mean, there's Tolkien data, of course, but within the show, there's very little data. But it would seem to me to fit and to work. And now we'll get more data tonight, and then we'll re-examine and test the hypothesis and see what happens. But
and here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. I'm looking at yours. I love that you're phrasing Tolkien lore Padawan yourself to Corey's Jedi Master. I've asked a very similar question to people who have no Tolkien exposure as well. So I feel like I'm somewhere in the middle of the ground. Corey's at one end of the spectrum and a complete layperson that's never encountered Tolkien at the other. So yeah, I have definitely followed the show geographically because I think I have a strong enough sense of like how Middle Earth is set up, but also they've really utilized the map well. So I like that they use that to show us the groundworks. I'm also a bit of a cheat because every episode of Rings and Realms has the map and we focus so heavily on like locations that geographically I feel pretty strong now. I also fell down the rabbit hole. Did you guys see that on Reddit, the migration map? Is that the one that you were referencing before?
Yes.
Yeah, a really beautiful fan-made map about where everybody moves, and I fell down that rabbit hole for a long time. So like geographically I feel very strong. Story-wise, I do struggle because there are some foundations laid that don't pay off for me because I don't know the depth of the background. So I'm a little concerned that they're relying too heavily on Corey to explain things or somebody to Google things or somebody to read X-ray, you know, like there are definitely, so like we've seen it in the YouTube comments, there are definitely people that don't understand the show until they watch Rings and Realms. That's a problem. You shouldn't have to have 2 hours of explanation to understand what's happening in a story. But I also have heard the other side that if you have no Tolkien experience whatsoever, they're not really concerned that they don't know the depth. They're just enjoying the show and it is making sense. So I kind of have to just believe that at this point. But that's the bit where I think I'm missing a few tricks, that there's some things happening that I'm like, who said what? How did that happen? That tree's poisoned what? You know?
Yes. Yeah. And I will be interested to see how this, again, I'm wondering how much shift there's going to be as we get into season 2, right? Having, you know, explained the variables that need explaining and we can just move forward with them, right? You know, how much that's going to change. So we'll see. Diamedia, you're right. They are expecting a lot out of their audience. And it's one of the things, Diamedia, I've not been talking about this much because if you do, it sounds condescending or insulting, and I don't mean it that way either way. But like when I hear people say things like "nothing happened in this episode," I'm like, okay, so you weren't willing actually to engage and think about what was said, which is fine. Like, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's your fault, right? Like, it's, it is the responsibility of the show to do that. But yeah, and just as like there are so many times when I'm seeing people say like, this show doesn't engage with Tolkien at all. And I'm just like, you're just like, tell me you don't know Tolkien very well without telling me you don't know Tolkien very well. Right. I mean, it's like the people who are like the trolls are just continually demonstrating that, like continually asserting that JD and Patrick know and understand Tolkien way better than they do, basically. And it's, anyway, but it does. I mean, Dimedia, as you say, it absolutely does come down to these people. It does demand a lot. You have to watch this show actively. It's not a show you can just veg out with. You really do have to put something into it.
Yeah, I definitely think you have to pay attention. I think you'll enjoy it if it's just on in the background because it's beautiful and there's some good action and things like that. But I don't know if you'd get it or like follow it, So I do think they expect a certain amount from their audience. But frankly, I really appreciate that. There's a lot of more brainless television on that I love. Don't get me wrong. I will definitely sit down and watch Gogglebox or whatever else is right. on and entertaining. But it's also kind of nice to have to work a little bit for a show and to really try to figure things out and to make these connections and understand some of the complicated and difficult relationships. And that's, you put the work in, you get something better out of it. So I feel like that's what they're setting us up for.
Right. And to me, like that's happening in a Tolkien show, like that there's that level of like richness and texture and depth in a Tolkien show, like, man, like a show that is so like dense and rich and full of Tolkien like references and thought that like it puzzles people and they have to sit through and work it out, and a whole bunch of people are like, I don't get it, this is boring, I'm not gonna watch this anymore. Like, to me, I'm like, it couldn't be better. Like it's like this is like me at Christmas, right? I mean, I literally could not ask for more than a show that requires I hear what you say when you say that it shouldn't require a 2-hour explanation show to help you get what happened in the episode, but at the same time, like, I'm ready.
This is like the best New York Times crossword puzzle made for Corey, right? Like this is your level of puzzle. I also love was it Jonathan Listens commented, found it really telling. The showrunner said that all the discussions fans are having right now, they had in the writer's room. Completely, like all the things that we're kind of speculating on and wondering, well, how does that work and how could they do that? And that, you're spending 2 hours on Rings and Realms acknowledging, and then I'm spending minutes looking at angles and things like that.
Yes.
They did that analysis. They also asked those questions. They also had people in the room being like, but wait, why can you think that? And how is this person there? I love that they went through that process. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, so back to expectations about the end of the season. Let's again think not just about like cliffhangers that are going to be or not be resolved. Where do we expect to be sitting? So like when we're done with episode 8 and we're preparing for the, like, as we then prepare for the who knows how long anticipation of season 2, where do you think the show wants us to be sitting? I think one of the things that I think we're going to get is, I think we're going to be staring the Rings of Power right in the face. That is, we will be prepared for the forging of the Rings of Power in season 2. Is like the anticipation, Rings of Power incoming, right? I mean, they've already taken a significant risk by calling the show the Rings of Power, and not having Rings of Power in season 1 at all, right? There's not been, and of course, people who know Tolkien see the references, like see how they're building up to it. We know what that furnace that Celebrimbor is building is going to be used for, right? We know that. but it's not. There's not been a hint of it within the show itself, right? So for people who don't already know that, they don't know that. So I think it's a significant risk in calling your show Rings of Power and then not doing anything, never uttering the phrase Rings of Power in the entirety of season 1. So I do think we're going to have, again, part of the the build up to the Meet My Friend Anatar speech I'm expecting to get from Celebrimbor in episode 8 is going to be, he's going to make his pitch, the Rings of Power pitch, right? Yeah. I have here's the idea, right? He's going to be pitching Gil-galad and probably Elrond as well, now that Elrond is in the know, right? In the know, I say in quotation marks. I think he's going to pitch the Rings of Power and then, introduce Anatar, basically. I think it has to be raised explicitly sometime before the end of the season so that we can all be thinking, I think big picture, apart from merely introducing us to characters and introducing us to places and starting plot arcs, those are all really important things, obviously, that season 1 has to do. What season 1 has to accomplish, and JD and Patrick talked about this in London when we first met them, it has to set up how people are going to respond, how different characters in different places are going to respond to. Why would they be tempted to say yes to Rings of Power?
Yeah. What is that temptation? And I feel like we are definitely starting to see some strong identifying with that, because I feel like it's so easy for us to be like, why would you pick that up? That that's evil. No, they don't know that's evil. There's the thread of hope in that for them. And
exactly. That's exactly why, that was the one of the primary things that led me to the reading of episode 5 that I did, and why I still think that Anatar is behind the scenes in Eregion, because not because I don't think them capable of making the kinds of radical changes to Tolkien's world and story that would have had to be made in order for all of that stuff to be true, organically true, from episode 5. But what we were seeing in Gil-galad's words, what we were hearing from Gil-galad is, this is why we would be tempted to say yes to the Rings of Power, right? Because we are convinced that there is this crisis and we feel this need to avert it.
Will solve it.
Yeah. There is some crisis that is significant enough that it's going to lead Gil-galad and Celebrimbor to choose the ends over the means. And we were already seeing it with both of them. We saw both of them say to Elrond, yeah, it's bad to break your oath, but the ends justify the means, right? They didn't use those words, but both of them were leaning on him in that direction. And that is a hint, that is a tip of what's going on there. So, yeah. Oh, Darren is asking, is there anything left from those early meetings in London we're still not able to talk about? I don't think so. I think we've seen it all now, haven't we?
I think so.
I think we've seen it all. I think by episode 3 we'd seen it all.
I'm making this face because I feel like there was something they told us to not go into detail about, but obviously it wasn't impactful enough for me.
My memory is selective, so if I was told that, I don't remember.
I actually took notes while we were in London, and I have yet to look back at those notes. I should do that and just see if anything registers. I'll do that for next week, guys. See if there's anything in that I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that part.
Yeah.
But no, I think we've seen everything content-wise from that.
Yeah. Meow, quick answer. Why does Sauron need a Celebrimbor forge if Mount Doom was available? He doesn't. Celebrimbor does, right? He's trying to get Celebrimbor. It's part of what he's not just using Celebrimbor because he has no other resources, right? He's using Celebrimbor as part of the corruption process. And so he needs Celebrimbor to have a forge so that Celebrimbor can make Rings of Power. He could just retire to Mount Doom and do an independent project, but there's a reason he didn't do that to start with, right? It's part of the corruption of the elves. So, okay. I don't think we're going to find the real Gil-galad tied up in a closet. No, I don't think so.
I like these comments about like the shot. I can definitely see that. We have to know that the rings are coming. We have to know that the forge is finished. We
Yeah,
have to know that Sauron is around. We have to know that the temptation is taking hold and people are making decisions that are not that great, that we know where it's going to go, but we don't know how yet. So
right.
all those things kind of lead to a shot of the rings. And I like these different suggestions that you can see like the ring molds on the
Right.
counter, or Sauron kind of spinning one in the background, or
Right, exactly. Right. Celebrimbor kind of fiddling with a ring on his hand, or something
uh-huh.
during the conversation, Um, but
You
yeah,
like
no, I
gold? I
think,
got gold.
yeah, yeah. Oh, Varking, totally agree. Of the new characters I would like to see introduced in season 2, Narvi is near the top of my list. Narvi is the dwarf mentioned as the one who worked with Celebrimbor to to make the new doors, speak and enter, speak friend
Oh,
and
I
enter
want
doors.
I want all the dwarves. Just give me all of the
More
dwarves.
dwarves. More
Yeah.
dwarves, yeah, exactly. So yeah, so Narvi, I would like to. We're told we're going to get Círdan. There are others that we could get. Celeborn's going to come sooner or later. I don't know if it'll be season 2.
Yeah.
Oh, there's another major character that I was thinking of. Anarion. I expect Anarion in season 2.
Yeah.
We'll get him sooner or later, season 2 or 3 at the latest. But
How do
yeah,
you think I'm blanking on her name now, the sister, Isildur's
Aarion.
sister,
Yeah.
Arian. How do you think she's going to factor in? Because we're not back in Numenor for a little while, and they're clearly setting her up to be somebody. And the architect thing is quite suspicious. Is she going to build something bad?
I think she's gonna be the cutest Nazgul. I think she'll be the most adorable Nazgul of the 9. Yeah.
Snaskel. Put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Okay.
that's my theory. I think
Okay.
she's going bad. Yeah, that she could be like one who helps to build the Temple of Morgoth
Yeah.
after Sauron comes. Yeah, but that's
Yeah.
not going to be like her next step. Like there's going to be down that direction. But yeah. Oh yeah. Okay, Ryan. I think I was thinking of that too. Glorfindel. Yeah. I think Glorfindel is likely eventually. I don't know if we'll get that in season 2 or not, but yeah, I think we know we're gonna get Círdan. I think we're sure to get Celeborn. I think it's possible that we'll get Glorfindel. I hope that we'll get Narvi. I Who else do we need?
I'm like,
Probably
as
no
of
more wizards.
I don't know about new characters, but I mean, I hope we get more Theo. I hope
Yep.
we get, a few more of these ones that we're not entirely sure of, but are starting to set some pretty good foundations. It was
Yes.
only this last episode I really started to get on Team Theo. So I'm like, where's
Yeah.
he going to go? Good or
Right.
bad? I just think he's starting to get really interesting.
Right. Yeah. Oh, Drowsnake, Orifer for sure. Orifer and like teenage Thranduil. Yeah. So Orifer is Thranduil the Elven. Orifer is Legolas's grandfather, Maggie. So he's the leader of the Sylvan Elves, who is gonna. But we don't need him for a while. We don't need him until season 5 as part of the Last Alliance. That's when he comes into Tolkien's story. So he doesn't. He doesn't have to be in the show for a while. We could do without him for a while. But Amandil, Chris, we can't be getting Amandil. Surely we would have had some reference. Amandil, Maggie, is Elendil's dad.
Okay.
And so he is because Tolkien does this sort of thing with them where Amando is the leader of the faithful, right? And Elendil is like the junior, dude, and Isildur is like really young. And so then they get to, when Amandil sacrifices himself and sort of essentially stays behind, and then Elendil leads the faithful onto Middle Earth. So, but I think it's pretty clear that they've removed the Amandil role. I don't. It is possible that Amandil is with Anarion in the West. I mean, Blood the Inspirer. I had given up almost on Anarion. So the fact that Anarion is there. Should we go and discover that Elendil's dad is like the venerable leader of the faithful conclave out in West Numenor, I would not be shocked by that. I'd be a little bit surprised that we've gotten not the first reference to, Grandpa at any point. We've had obviously lots of father-son stuff with Elendil and Isildur. We've had a bunch of references to the dead mom, right? We've had several references to the missing brother who's made his choice and gone to the West. But yeah, he'd be coming out of nowhere at this point if we got him on Dill. But it's not impossible. But I'm not holding my breath on that. Yeah. Are we confident Orifer will exist in this show? No. Confident? No. I think it's possible we'll get him, but I'm not confident in any way. Yeah. And anyway, as I say, really less important. And Collingwood, I agree with you. Not only do I not want, I don't expect we're going to have a whole lot of mystery box, who is this mysterious character things going on in future seasons. I think that was a big part of sort of the hook to, why should you care about the stranger? Because you don't know who he is and want to learn more, but I'm not expecting that's going to really happen. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Anyway, but apart from thinking about particular characters, yeah, the orientation towards the Rings of Power is like that beginning to turn the corner so that we're ready to work towards the Rings of Power. I think is definitely definitely going to be there. I think that most of the mystery boxes will be opened by the end of season 1. There will still be mysteries about the stranger, I'm sure. I mean, he's a legitimately mysterious kind of figure, right? The big question, is he a good guy or a bad guy, right? Is he an evil creature thus far in disguise, or is he malevolent or benevolent, right? That question, I think, is going to be answered. There'll be more.
I bet it's not going to be clear though, because we've seen now that good is not good, bad is not bad, and good thinks they're bad and bad thinks they're good. So
there's going to be doubts. Yeah.
Phil was also reminding me that we were going to talk about Dutch angles, but the only thing I think I would point out, because I did a whole section on Rings of Realms about Dutch angles, but the only thing I think we wanted to point out was there's this wonderful comment on YouTube from somebody talking about the Dutch angle, which, if you haven't seen Rings of Realm yet, is the whole Adar scene, the interview scene in the barn, is filmed at a Dutch angle, which means it's off kilter. And the whole point is for it to make you feel unsettled and to not know how you're supposed to look and where you're supposed to look and who's in charge, because the power dynamic is off, because we're above, but we're below, and we're off kilter. And somebody on YouTube pointed out, let me get their name because it was a really good comment and they should get credit for it. Tabasco de Gama. Tabasco, thanks. Commented about how it mimics the stone in the ship metaphor that we've had throughout this entire series for Galadriel. You don't know what is up. You don't know what is down. Beautiful tie. And how it messes, how the Dutch angle confuses their eye contact, right? Adar is low and she is high, right? And they're making eye contact. But yeah, because of the angle, it's unclear who's looking up and who's looking down, and sometimes it looks like they're on the same level, so it looks like they should be equal, but they are not, because they're like this. But because it's shot, they kind of look like this. I mean, the whole point of that scene is to just confuse you about who's in charge. Yeah. And then tying it into that reference from earlier in the season is just beautiful. So yeah. Dutch angles, man, powerful things.
Yeah.
I loved that in Rings of Realm when it started Dutch angle and then reset you.
Yeah, we were playing with that. I was already standing there ready to start the shoot, and then we were making comments about, somebody made a joke about the Dutch angle, and I was like, No, we should actually we should actually do that. So we started playing with that. It was funny, Maggie, because Ian wasn't in the room when we were doing that. So he was like trying to keep from laughing out loud when we did the Adar and Galadriel angles, Dutch angles, shots. Greg and Ben and I set
Love
that up while Ian was out of the room. So it was really funny. But
I don't see the final cut until you guys do either. So it's really fun to watch it back, and like we've talked through stuff, but then you see it, it's like, oh my God, they went there. And then I start thinking, what time of day was this? Was this 2 a.m.? Did you make these decisions at 2 a.m.?
It was about 11 by the time we made maybe 12:30 by the time we made that.
I love it.
But yeah, no, it was definitely fun. I was surprised. I didn't how they dubbed Adar's actual voice over my lips.
Was great.
Right. That was really cool.
Was
I was like a little bit disappointed because I thought I actually did a pretty good Adar impression there, but like it's good. It was actually funnier with the dubbing, but
I think stay with Adar. And Galadriel's voice over top. That was great.
Yeah.
That was great.
Oh, the making of videos, Matt, are so good. If you guys haven't seen those yet, go to the Studio Lab page. I think they're on the Rings and Realms channel. So if you go to the Rings and Realms channel, you can see those.
Both Corey and I have retweeted them.
Yeah, the one that they just filmed this week was about the making of episode 6. That was stuff that was shot on Monday when we were there at the studio. Actually recorded by, like, when Ben says like we're in hour 16 there at the beginning, he was like, so that was probably shot at about 5 a.m. or something when they were, no, probably later. That was probably when Pat arrived at work the next day and Ben was still there editing that they shot that bit. So yes, like Ben, the director who was starring in that making of video, had actually been working on Rings and Realms for like the last 24 hours.
And then continued, because I had a meeting with him at 10 a.m. his time, and he said he had slept for about 35 minutes.
There you go.
So that's not a joke. Yeah, it's mad.
They did.
That video is so good, though, because you guys can see a bit more of the behind the scenes of what that video wall is, because it's just an incredible feat that most people just don't have access to. And here we are, standing in front of these incredible images. And the guys are so passionate about it that like putting these episodes together is super fun. And it's gotten a little bit smoother as we've gotten on, not faster, but smoother.
Yeah, exactly. Diomede, yes, we're doing, it's like the last 2 episodes of Rings and Realms, 5 and 6, have both been filmed entirely on Monday. Like I show up at the studio. Maggie, of course, is remote for these. So Maggie, you've been recording on Mondays, right? Your material. Yeah. So you record your stuff there and you send it over to them. And then I've been arriving at the studio in the afternoon, and we just go through, we figure out how to set everything up, and then I'm planning out my I don't script it. Like I have a kind of an outline. I have like talking points. I work through a sequence of how I want to talk about it, and I have that on like a little teleprompter, so I don't lose track of where I am and where I'm going. But then it's all spontaneous from there. But yeah, then we film, and I normally I'm there at the studio for 8 to 10 hours on a shooting day, and then they start editing, and edit through for another 12
hours. I mean, because they talk about this
15
in the videos.
hours.
Like they edit into a timeline, so they have one big chunk to clean up, but then it's the overlay. So we talk so much about scenes and shots and images and reference points, and they take those images from the episode and then overlay it into us talking. So that's the stuff that takes so long, and then they grade everything so it has the right look to it. And it's so much work, but you can tell these guys are just so passionate about it. So we hope we get to keep doing it too. Don't worry.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's this is, I mean, all of the folks who are working on this are volunteering their time. I mean, so all of this work that's being done every week to make these episodes and turn them around is being done volunteer. And big thanks to the Studio Lab folks who are, giving us the space to and the team to do it in. It's been a remarkable gift.
It does kind of crack me up every week, though, when we see all these comments on YouTube being like, clearly, Studio Lab's part of Amazon. Look, they're in the credits. They've like, No. So Ben said he's just going to put a giant disclaimer that says none of us work for Amazon.
None of us work for Amazon. Yeah, no, not a penny has gone in to support this. Now, like, I would love to see some pennies support this. If we had some pennies supporting this, then there's so much more we could do, and we could get like an editing team who, we have plans for what we could do with pennies if we had pennies that were going towards this. But at this point, no pennies involved, and it's all been volunteer. But Varking, I saw you ask about your invite to the studio. First of all, anytime, Varking. We would love to have you on,
Varking. Oh my God, Varking, come.
You totally should.
Contact me. Yeah, Varking, you get first refusal. But guys, we're doing a live watch party thing. So, the links are on Corey and I's Twitter. But if you want to come up to New Hampshire and watch the final filming, because we're going to be together in New Hampshire for the final episode and doing the live watch party, doing a live Other Minds and Hands from the studio.
Yeah, next week is going to be really cool. So, so if you can get up to New Hampshire next weekend, like next Friday, the Thursday night when episode 8 drops, when the finale drops, we're going to do a live watch party at the studio so people can watch episode 8 on the big screen, and we'll do the live discussion immediately afterwards. And then the next day, we're going to shoot Rings and Realms. So we're going to shoot Rings and Realms with a live studio audience. So we're going to have, folks are going to be there. And the folks who are coming, like, this is not going to be a passive backstage ticket that people are getting here. You're going to be involved in so I'm going to be like, I'll be, because remember,
at the kids table.
Right, yeah, this is all going to be happening. This is all going to be like the event that day is all going to be starting about 9 hours after we finish watching the episode for the first time, right? And a little bit of sleep is going to have to happen in that 9 hours too. But then anyway, so I'm still going to be thinking through like my outline. What do we want to talk about? How do we want to discuss? So I'm going to be talking, the folks who are there are going to be helping me with that. We're going to be brainstorming, like what images do we want to put up on the wall? What segments do we want to do? How do we want to approach those? Maybe we'll be able to film some bits with extras. You can actually appear on a Rings and Realms episode. We'll see how we can figure that. We might do some live sort of Q&A stuff as part of or connected with the show, because we're going to have folks there. So,
but also throughout that day, we've got our Twitter show at noon. Corey's got the Twitch watch alongs. Like all those things are going to be happening.
In like other parts of the studio. So it'll be kind of backstage for the whole shebang.
And Highlander, we might do that. Rings and Realms is taped in front of a live studio audience.
Exactly.
So we have a lot of ridiculous ideas that have come up in the wee hours that if we've got time, we're going to film a whole lot of extra content.
Oh man, yeah. I have. I even wrote a whole script that we didn't get to do this past week, but
some things might be revealed, so we have to just sit on that script.
We have to sit on that script. We'll
make something happen.
Yeah.
And in short, come on up and Vark can get your ass up here.
Yeah, so we have so you can find, so we have we're selling tickets to this. They're cheap. It's $75 for the whole thing, or $50 if you're also attending New England Moot, which is the next day, which is our Signum little mini conference that we're having the next day, also at Studio Lab there in New Hampshire. So if you go to signumuniversity.org and then click on the news and events category, or down to the regional moots category, you'll see both New England Moot and also the links for the Rings and Realms finale event. So definitely invite folks to come along. It'd be great to meet folks. You can be involved in helping us shape and film the final episode of Rings and Realms. We're going to film as much as we can that day on Friday together as a group. So yes, Sarah, seats are still available, but we do have a limited number. It's not it's going to be everybody we can sort of lawfully and safely fit within that room. So there are limited seats that we can do. So thanks, Druid's Fire, for posting the link on that. Appreciate that.
And Zayden, everything that's normally online will be online, so you can definitely still do the watch along and the Q&A afterwards. Like we won't set up a camera in the studio all day to just like watch us walk around, but right. everything that's normally online will be online. So
exactly. Yeah. No, it's there's not going to be a hybrid element to this because it's going to be too much chaos for us to try to stream.
And it's a big space. We don't have that many cameras. I mean, we'd set one up over the sandwiches, and that's probably where you'd see us the most.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, there'll be food, and it'll it'll be fun. So,
Yay.
yeah. Awesome. Oh man, Swallowed Up in Victory. That's a really great question. Why is the Numenorians arriving a eucatastrophe and not a Deus Ex Machina? That's a conversation I've had before, but it's a really good question. Like, there's actually people tend. Well, we don't have time to talk about this right now. But at some point we'll have a conversation about the difference between a eucatastrophe and a Deus Ex Machina, because they are they do have many similarities, but there are some pretty important differences too. So, anyway, that is what is going on. So I do hope that folks can come and join us. Can come and join us next Friday. Next week is our big week. Maggie, can't wait for you to fly over here next week. To be.
Yeah, I fly on Tuesday. I'm going to actually not be filming things on a tiny camera here in my living room. I'll be in the studio.
Yes,
can't
exactly.
Wait.
So that'll be
can't
fun.
Wait.
But of course, we're going to be filming episode 7 on Monday before you leave. So then we'll be bracing ourselves for episode 8. But anyway, awesome. Well, we're over time, so we should probably let you guys go. Thanks, Maggie, for another fun discussion, and we'll see. I will be back for the what do you call it? The watch party tonight on Twitch. So if you go to, I accidentally broadcasted everywhere a week before last, but I did it right last week, and I'm going to try to do it right again. So if you come to twitch.tv/SignumU. That's where you can join us for the watch party tonight, and then discussion immediately afterwards, as always. And then I head to the airport. So that's tonight.
That's right.
But
I might join you for the watch party.
Cool.
It would work well if I woke up early and did that, but I can't promise I will wake up early and do that. So we'll see.
I never
rely on me.
I never criticize people for failing to wake up at 5 a.m. Like, I totally get it. Yeah, I totally get it. Yeah, anyway, awesome. Thanks, everybody. And we will see you guys soon. Bye now.
Soon. Bye.